We continue now at the top of Daf Chafam Aleph Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 20a. And the previous summit, Rabbi Yochanan said that when it comes to Meiser Sheni, eating Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim, a person only gets Malkus if first the Meiser Sheni went into Yerushalayim and then it was brought out of Yerushalayim. That is the situation in which you get Malkus. And the Gemara is in the middle of asking a question from a Brisa. The Brisa brings the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi is talking about a Te'ena, a fig of Tevel, and the person designates Truma and Meiser Rishon and Meiser Sheni, and he's in Yerushalayim, and the person we're talking about is a Kohen, and he eats that Te'ena after he's designated the Truma and the Meiser Rishon and the Meiser Sheni. And so Rabbi Yossi says, Loka Achas, Rabbi Yossi says he gets one set of Malkus. And the Mefarish explains, Loka Achas, he gets one set of Malkus. So Lo Hotzia Midei Tevel B'kriyas Shem Zeh, because by designating it in this fashion, it's still Tevel. Why? The Kachel Meiser Rishon HaTavel Trumas Meiser, because he separated everything except for the Trumas Meiser that's supposed to be designated from the Meiser Rishon. The Kavar Alav the Tevel, and therefore, since he didn't designate any Trumas Meiser, he violates the law related to Tevel. Aval Isser Truma de Ka'achelek, and now there's no prohibition in terms of eating Truma to HaKohenu, because again, the Bryce is referring to someone who was a Kohen. And granted, if he would have designated the Trumas Meiser, he could eat it. But lo lucky midi, he wouldn't have gotten Malkus at all to have a Trumas Meiser l'Kohen. Vu Kohen, because Trumas Meiser goes to a Kohen, and he is a Kohen. V'ya Meiser Rishon, v'ya Meiser Sheni lo lucky, he's not going to get Malkus on Meiser Rishon and Meiser Sheni, d'ha'af l'zorim shari, because that's permitted even for non-Kohanim. And the Brisa continues, V'zor sha'achle, now if a Zor were to eat it, lo kashtayim, so he's going to get Malkus for two, and the reason why he's going to get Malkus for two is because a Zor is not allowed to eat Truma. She'ilu b'tchila achle, and the point over here says the Brisa is that let's say he would have eaten it originally without doing anything, so ein alok el acha, so he actually only would have gotten one Malkus, meaning the reason is because you have over here a situation of Tevel, because you didn't designate Trumas Meiser, and you also have a situation of Truma when the Zor eats it, and so that's two sets of Malkus. Now if you wouldn't have done anything, so it would have just been Tevel, and then there just would have been one set of Malkus. In any case, that's what the Brisa says, and now the Gemara brings its question. The whole reason over here is because he's in Yerushalayim, meaning that's why there's no violation in terms of Meiser Sheni. But let's say he'd be outside of Yerushalayim, Loka Shalosh, apparently there'd be three sets of Malkus because you're eating Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim. Now, even though apparently it never went into the wall, it never went inside the walls of Yerushalayim, it didn't see the inside of the wall, so apparently there's Malkus for eating Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim, even if it never went into Yerushalayim. That's the question on Rabbi Yochanan from the previous summit. And the Gemara answers to this, no, da'ayli v'yafke. What we just mean to say is that actually he did bring it in and then he brought it out. That happens to be the case. And Rashi explains, da'ayli Yerushalayim. Again, he brought it into Yerushalayim, v'kara l'Hashem, and then he designated it as Meiser Sheni. V'hadar afke chutz, and then he brought it out, the chaz of Meiser Sheni pnei hachoma, hilkach loka shalosh, that it really did see the inside of the wall, and that's why there's three sets of Malkus. That's the case. But the Gemara continues, if so, my lamemer. So then what do you even need to say that for? And Rashi explains, my lamemer, de bishlama yamin Meiser Sheni begvul and loka shalosh. Now granted, if you would say that Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim gets three sets of Malkus, afagav the lo chaz pnei hachoma, even though it never was inside Yerushalayim. Ashmein on tuva. So then you're teaching us a lot of chidushim. Techayov and all of afa bishalo ra pnei choma. You're obligated on it, even though it never saw the inside of the wall. V'yitzrach lemisnei mishum diyuka dida, and then you'd learn it. It was necessary to teach this because of the inference. Ha-begvulin, that again in Gvulin, the person would be chayiv. Eloyamer b'da'ayle v'yafchi. But if the case over here is he brought it in and then he brought it out, my lamemer, so what's the point of saying it? Lo hi itzricha v'lav diyuka dida. You don't need it and you don't need the inference. Tahapshita. That's obvious. Da'afilu kohen loka al ha-tevel. Even a kohen is going to get malchus on tevel. V'zor al ha-truma. And a zor, a non-kohen, is going to get malchus on truma. V'al meiser sheni. Chutz l'chom. And on meiser sheni, that's outside of the wall. Everybody knows that. There would be nothing that's really teaching us in that situation, and so therefore again, my lamemer, if the case over here is that it was brought into Yerushalayim, you separated Meiser Sheni and you brought it out, that doesn't seem to be a chiddush. And the Gemara continues and answers, no, it is a chiddush, because here what are we talking? Could go into Ailinu b'tivlai, when it was brought in, it was still tevel. The kasavar matana shelo hurmu kimisha hurmu damyan, and this Brisa holds, meaning Rabbi Yossi holds, that when you have matanos that were not separated, it is as if they were separated, even though nothing was separated, it's as if it was separated. Rashi explains, Da'ayle betivla, he brought it in as tevel, meaning lahi te'ena b'Yerushalayim. He brought that fig into Yerushalayim, and it was tevel. To call two mechitzos l'maiser sheni ha'asid litarim imenu. The mechitzos, the walls of Yerushalayim, are admitting that maiser sheni, which in the future is going to be separated. It wasn't separated, but still it's contained within the te'ena, and that is enough. V'kasavar matana shalahurmu kamishur madamyan. Rabbi Yossi holds that matanas that were not taken, it's as if they were. V'dami command da'ayil maiser sheni be'enei. And the chiddush over here is it's as if he brought the actual Meiser Sheni into Yerushalayim, even though really the Meiser Sheni really is within a fig that's actually Tevel. The Havale Roa Pnei HaChoma, that is called Roa Pnei HaChoma V'Hilkach, and therefore, Ki Afka, when he brings it out, Loka Olav, he will in fact, in Malkus, Uchagon de Afkanami B'Tivla. And Rashi says the case, and the Mefarish says rather, that the case is that he brought it out also when it was Tevel, and again, the Chiddush is that Matana Shalo Hurmu, Kimisha Hurmu Damyan. But the Gemara continues, V'savar Rabbi Yossi matana shelo hurmu kamish hurmu dami. Does Rabbi Yossi really hold that when something is not taken off, it's as if it was taken off? V'atanya, but we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Yossi, Lo nechleku beis Shammai u beis Hillel al peiro shelo nigmar malachtan. Beis Shammai and beis Hillel, they do not argue when it comes to produce which was not finished. The processing of the produce was not finished. V'avru b'Yerushalayim, and it passed through Yerushalayim. Sheyifta ma'aser sheni shalahen, that you can redeem that Meiser Sheni, v'yochal b'chol makom, and eat it anywhere. V'alman nechlugu, what do they argue about? Al peiro shenigmar malachtan, they're arguing about on produce. Let's say the process was entirely finished. V'yavir b'Yerushalayim, and it passes in Yerushalayim. Shebeis Shammai omrim yachzer Meiser Sheni shelahem v'yochal b'Yerushalayim. Beis Shammai say you have to return that Meiser Sheni and eat it in Yerushalayim. U'beis Hillel omrim, Beis Hillel say yifta v'yochal b'chol makom, you can redeem it and you can eat it anywhere. And the Mefarish explains Sheyifta Meiser Sheni, again in the case where it's lo nigmar malachton, so then everybody agrees it can be redeemed. Adayin yesh lo padiyah could still be redeemed. The came into lo nigmar malachton, since the malacha was not completed, lo amrinan kamish hurmu damyan. So it's not as if the Meiser Sheni was separated. V'ra pnei hachoma. It's not as if the Meiser Sheni entered into Yerushalayim. V'ain lo padiyah and has no redemption. You could redeem it because the Meiser Sheni is considered like it never entered Yerushalayim. Once it enters Yerushalayim, then padiyah, then redemption is a problem. Yachzer Meiser Sheni v'yochal b'Yerushalayim, but then we had a machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. What if it was nigmar malachtan and entered Yerushalayim? So at that point in time, can it be redeemed? Beis Shammai say that the Meiser Sheni has to be returned and eaten in Yerushalayim. The Kasavri Beis Shammai kamishu hurmu damyon, because Beis Shammai hold that it's as if it was already taken off. And Yifta v'yochal b'chol makom, and the Beis Hillel say that it can be redeemed and eaten anywhere. Midamasni Rabbi Yossi aliba de Beis Hillel yiften, and the Mefarish says from the fact that Rabbi Yossi says according to Beis Hillel that it can be redeemed. Shma mino dehachi svir le. You see that he holds like Beis Hillel. The Beis Shammai b'makom Beis Hillel ain't a Mishnah, because Beis Shammai against Beis Hillel is nothing. Midka'amar yiften, from the fact that Beis Hillel over here say yifta that it should be redeemed. Shma mino de matana shelo hurmu lav kamish hurmu dami. You see according to Beis Hillel that since it was never taken, the Meiser Sheni was never separated. It's as if it was not separated at all when it went into Yerushalayim. V'lo ra pnei hachoma, and unlike Beis Shammai, according to Beis Hillel, the Meiser Sheni, it's never considered as if it was in Yerushalayim, v'yesh lo pedi, and that's why redemption is possible, as the Gemara will continue, v'yisal kadaituch. And so again, the Gemara is asking from the fact that Rabbi Yossi is saying that according to Beis Hillel, and again, Beis Shammai b'makom Beis Hillel is nothing, so we're going to follow Beis Hillel. And so from the fact that Beis Hillel over here say, the yifte v'yochal b'chol makom, so you brought these peiros shenigmar malachton into Yerushalayim, and Beis Hillel is saying it's not kamish hurmu damyan, and that's why Beis Hillel say it never entered into Yerushalayim, so you can still redeem it. As the Gemara continues, v'sal kadaitach, if it should enter your mind that matanas shelo hurmu kamish hurmu damyan, that when you have matanas that weren't taken, it's as if they were taken, so then the Meiser Sheni really would have entered into Yerushalayim, and hakaltu mechitza, so then it would have been admitted by the partitions, by the walls of Yerushalayim, and so then Beis Hillel should say that redemption is not possible. Again, from the fact that Beis Hillel is saying redemption is possible, and again, this is talking in a case even where it's peirosh and nigmar malachton, apparently matana shelo hurmu is not kamisha hurmu damyan. That goes against what we just said within Rabbi Yossi. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rabba, Rabba says, and the Mesoras Hashas changes this to Amar Rava. Rava says, Mechitza lechol doraisa. When it comes to the walls of Yerushalayim to eat, that's a doraisa halacha. But mechitza liklo, but the idea that the mechitzas are liklo, that they admitted inside the rabbanon, that's only midrabbanon. V'chi gazer rabbanon ki isei b'yeini, and the rabbanon only made that gezerah, and the Meiser Sheni is in front of us. But betiv lo gazer rabbanon, they didn't make such a gezerah when it's still tevel. And therefore, the idea is, since mechitza lechol doraisa, so at the top of the Yomid, where we're talking about getting malchus for eating the Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim, so there we'll say that even if it entered while it was still tevel and exited while it was still tevel, but there we're going to say mechitza lechol doraisa, we're going to say matanos shalohurmu kimisha hurmu damyan, and it's as if it entered Yerushalayim and exited Yerushalayim, and you're going to get malchus for eating that Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim. But when we're talking about mechitza liklot, which is talking about redeeming the Meiser Sheni, so that's only midrabanan, and that we do not apply if it enters Yerushalayim as tevel. If it enters Yerushalayim as tevel, we say it's not as if it entered Yerushalayim, and therefore you would be able to redeem it only if it entered Yerushalayim be'ein. If it entered Yerushalayim as Meiser Sheni, then we would say mechitza liklot, and then we would say that redemption is not going to be possible. And the Gemara continues with another answer to the question we asked on Rabbi Yochanan from the Brisa. Again, Rabbi Yochanan said that to be chayiv malchus for eating Meiser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim, the Meiser Sheni has to enter Yerushalayim and then leave Yerushalayim. And we asked the question from the Brisa, because the Brisa just seems to imply that if you'd be outside of Yerushalayim, you get malchus on the Meiser Sheni, even though it never entered Yerushalayim. And the Gemara had suggested that maybe the answer is the Brisa is talking about a case where it enters Yerushalayim and exits and leaves Yerushalayim, but the Gemara had then asked, if so, why even say it? It doesn't seem to be a chiddush. And to that, the Gemara answers that we can say the chiddush is as follows. Ravina says, we could be talking about a case where he's holding the Meiser Sheni on a pole. It's not like on his shoulder, but it's just hanging from a pole. V'tiv showed boider Rav Papa, and that would answer the question we asked earlier, Rav Papa's question. Rashi explains, Ravina Amar hadadai kinan la'el habegvulan lo kashalosh. Again, we made an inference in the Brisa that outside of Yerushalayim get 3 sets of malchus. The kabois ma'ila. And the Gemara asks, well, what's the chiddush of that? So Itzrich could go to Nakat le Bekanya. Could be the cases as follows: that the Meiser Sheni again is hanging from a pole. The Kamash Malon de Cheman Dura Pnei Achom Adami, and it would be teaching us that that's as if it was inside Yerushalayim. In other words, let's say he's in Yerushalayim, but it's hanging from a pole, and the actual Meiser Sheni is outside of Yerushalayim. That was Rav Papa's question earlier, and we'll understand from here that it actually did. It's as if it did enter into Yerushalayim. Veloka Mishum Lo Suchal Ihadar Archakei V'Achle. Again, he's going to get the malchus for eating it outside Yerushalayim if he leaves that area. V'tifshon mina boy the Rav Papa to boil el, and this would answer the question of Rav Papa that he asked earlier, whether that's considered entering Yerushalayim or not. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, HaKoreach Karcha Barosho, if somebody creates a bald spot on his head, V'hamakif Pas Rosho, if somebody rounds the corners of his head, referring to the cutting of the payas, V'hamashchis Pas Zakano, if somebody destroys the corners of his beard, V'hasoret Srita Achas Alames, if somebody cuts an incision because of his grief over somebody that died, Chayiv, he's going to be Chayiv Malchus. Sara Srita Achas Al Chamisha Mesim, let's say he cuts 1 cut for 5 dead, O Chamish Sritos Al Mesechet, or let's say he cuts 5 cuts for 1 person who died, Chayiv al kol achas v'achas, he's going to be chayiv on each one. Al harosh shtayim, when it comes to the Pa'as Rosho, the corners of his head, there are 2 violations. Achas mikan v'achas mikan, one on this side, one on that side, meaning there's payas on both sides of the head. And al hazakin shtayim mikan u'shtayim mikan, when it comes to the beard, you actually have 2 on each side. V'achas milmat, and then 1 on the bottom. Those are all areas of the beard that cannot be destroyed. Rabbi Eliezer says, Im nitlu kulan ke'achas, let's say he destroys all of these various areas of the beard at once, eino chayiv al achas, he's only going to be chayiv 1. He's only chayiv when he destroys the beard with a razor. Rabbi Eliezer says, afilu loktu b'malaket, even if he destroys it with the tweezers, or berhitani, or with a plane, chayiv, he's going to be chayiv in that case. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Lo Yikrachu, the pasuk says they shouldn't create a bald spot. Yachol afilu kereach arba v'chamesh krichos. One might think that even if he makes 4 or 5 bald spots, Lo yehei chayiv el achas, he will only be chayiv 1. Tamalomar karcha, the pasuk says, Lo Yikrachu karcha, lechayiv al kol karcha v'karcha, to say that he's chayiv on every single bald spot. And barosham, and then it says, Lo Yikrachu karcha barosham, they shouldn't make the bald spot on their head. Ma tamalomar, why does it say barosham? Lefisha nemer, because the pasuk says, Lo tiskodu, you shouldn't lacerate yourself, and you shouldn't place a bald spot between your eyes over the dead. Now this pasuk of lo tiskodedu is actually in reference to Yisraelim, whereas the pasuk of lo yikrachu is actually talking to the Kohanim. So it says by the Yisraelim, it says bein einechem, between your eyes. So yachol lo yehei chayiv ela al bein ho'einayim belvad. One might think that if Yisrael, if he makes the bald spot, he's only chayiv on the area between the eyes. Minayin l'rabos kol harosh, from where do we know to to include the entire head. Talmud lomar barosham, the pasuk says by the kohanim barosham l'rabos kol harosh. That comes to include the entire head. V'yein li'ela b'kohanim, but I might only know that by kohanim. Shariba b'hen akos of mitzvahs yiseiros, that there's a lot of extra mitzvahs by kohanim. Yisrael minayin, how do I know that that's true by Yisrael also? Nemar kan karcha, it says over here the word karcha. V'nemar lahalan karcha, and it says over there the word karcha. Ma lahalan chayev al kol karcha v'karcha, just like over there you're chayev on every single bald spot. V'chayev al harosh kebein ha'inayim, and you're chayev on the entire head, just like between the eyes. Afkan, so too over here, chayev al kol karcha v'karcha, you're chayev on every single bald spot. V'chayev al harosh kebein ha'inayim, and you're chayev on the whole head, just like the area between the eyes, meaning just like by kohanim, you're chayev again on every single bald spot, and just like by kohanim it applies to the entire head, that is all true by Yisraelim as well. And then we can go in the other direction and learn something. Lahalan al meis, just like over there by Yisrael, it says specifically that you're making the bald spot because of the grief over somebody who died. Afkan al meis, so too over here by the kohanim, when it says lo yikrchu, it's talking about that you shouldn't make a bald spot out of grief that somebody died. And the Gemara says, Hani dalid v'hei krichos hechidami, these 4 or 5 bald spots where it says you're chayiv on every one, what exactly is the case? Ilema bazach arzef, the case is that he did it one after the other, uva chamesh hasros, and there were 5 separate warnings, so then pshita, so then it is obvious. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Amud Beis.